I grew up loving alternative rock, and one of the things that I always enjoyed growing up was a good power ballad. We heard them a bunch in the 80s. We heard them a lot in the 2000s with bands like Lifehouse, and basically every little pop punk band had a different power ballad. And it's something that I feel like went away for a long time, but I'm starting to see that come back, especially with bands like Joan, who did their big song Superglue on their last album. You have bands like the Band Camino doing Bruises and Help Me Get Over You. You have people like Knox doing Here's to Us. So in this video, I want to show you how to make a kind of alternative pop rock ballad that starts as something really small and intimate and then kind of blossoms into this big, super cinematic, very, very kind of emotionally intense landscape. So we're going to dive in and look at all of that in 1 second. But before we do, my name is Austin. You're watching Make Pop Music. If you like this video, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. We do tutorials like this every single Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss them. Also, visit our website, makepopmusic.com, after this video and check out all of the really, really cool stuff that we have over there. Free content, sample packs, preset packs, courses. Go check that out. Link in description. Let's actually dive in so we can start cranking out this ballad. The first thing that I want to do is actually start with some kind of piano, so I'm going to go ahead and open up Keyscape, and then I'm just going to lay down my main kind of piano line. Here's the piano that I ended up with, just this C7 cinematic, pretty standard grand piano for any of these kind of ballads. And in terms of like chord progression, I kind of want to be in D major. I find it super sad, but also like uplifting. It's weird, but maybe something like... maybe something like that, just to kind of get us started, give us a little bit of melody. So I tracked in my piano MIDI. One thing is that I'm not hard quantizing really any of this. I want the velocities to be real, so I actually played it on my weighted keyboard just to kind of give it that real life ballad feel. And then I'm actually using this MBSI by Metric Halo and Make Believe. I've been using this a ton on acoustics, pianos, and what I'm doing is basically boosting some top end, boosting some mids, and doing a little bit of compression. And then I just have a little bit of EQ basically right here. This is the one I ended up going with, and it sounds like this. Here's what it sounds like without any processing. This is completely dry. With... kind of brings out some of that analog hiss, brings out that pedal noise, makes it feel like a live tracked piano in my opinion, adds that compression. It feels really, really nice. So to me, I'm feeling pretty good with that. One thing that I also kind of want to add is maybe some kind of like pads in the background that are pedaling, almost like you would hear in like a CCM worship song. I'm not a religious guy personally, but worship music does this sound very, very well. So maybe let's add some pads so we can kind of get that in there. Here's what I ended up with. This is basically just a pad pedaling on D in 3 different octaves. Sounds like this. And I'm just kind of letting that pedal as the chord progression plays. This is the Guru pad out of our Lush sound pack for Serum. So this pack that we made was like really, really inspired by just big cinematic ambient textures. Guru is such a fire thing for that. And it has that little noise in there that's kind of adding that little counter melody just naturally. So what I did is I ended up actually replicating that with another pad. This one is just the MPC pad out of Lush, but I'm actually playing that little melody. And with the main piano, just adds a bit of texture. Now, the next thing I want to do is add some kind of like acoustic riff, but I might add some processing. So I'm going to track up an acoustic guitar and then jump back in. So here is my acoustic guitar. This is just a double track guitar, pan left and right, and then comp down into one thing. There's nothing on this acoustic. This is just straight up. So the first thing that I want to do is add a little bit of MBSI just to kind of, again, tame some of that top end, add some of those mids back, compress it a little bit. That's just kind of helping tame it, make it not so insane. The next thing that I'm doing is starting to do sound design on this. So let's open up Filter Freak. There's this distorted staccato 8s. And I know right now you're thinking that sounds ridiculous, but I'm going to open up Effects Modulator. This is just stock in Cubase, but you could use any kind of like Gatekeeper or Kickstart or anything. But I'm just doing a volume and a filter automation, and that's adding that ramp down. Next thing is a little bit of Kickstart to do that upswell. Then we're going to add a little bit of reverb. I've been using a bunch of the Arturia EFX stuff, so this is their Rev Intensity. I found this preset, Chill Waves. It basically just adds like basically a reverb and a delay because it's messing with that pre-delay and it's all synced. And then the last thing I'm doing is just some good old filtering with the trusty Pro Q. Sounds like this. But now we have that super cool kind of percussive, almost ambient sound that started like this and became this. And I'm basically just going to automate that filter up and kind of open and close it as this verse will play through. The next thing that I kind of want to do is start fleshing out the B section of this verse. I want to add in maybe like a bass, maybe some like low string like cellos or like bowed basses, and then maybe some drums. And I'm debating on if I want to do acoustic or electronic, but I'll make that decision and then check back in. Here's what I ended up doing for the second part of the verse. Let's take a look at this just big kind of bowed string bass. It's just a pretty standard cinematic orchestral bass out of Contact. I want to say that this one is the Session Strings. Let me pull it up. Yeah, Session Strings Pro 2, and I'm just playing on the, I think, the cello and the double bass. So that's what that is doing. It's just kind of mimicking the bass line. And then in terms of, I'll go to drums next. We actually ended up going with electronic drums, so I just have this click, this little percussive kind of loop, and then I have this little hat loop and a nice little filter snare. One thing I will also say, I forgot to mention this when I played that first progression, but I'm actually in 3/4 on this. So if you're hearing that like swung waltzy kind of feel, it's because we're in 3/4. So if I go here, you can see on my time signature, I'm playing 3/4 instead of 4/4. That basically just means that it's 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. You hear a lot in these big kind of cinematic ballads. So that's why the drums feel so swung. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. And then we just have a little bass line underneath. One thing that I like to do with bass lines is if I have something that's going to kind of function as a real bass line, so this muted bass. A lot of the time I find the low end of real basses, even when they're sampled in something like Trillion, to be a little bit inconsistent. So what I've been doing lately is just filtering out all of the low end, essentially. I've got this on a linear phase, basically filtering out everything below 125. And then essentially I'm just kind of replicating the low end with something like a sine wave and Serum. I'm using this analog BD sine, and then I have a little bit of distortion, and I'm kind of just mimicking the decay of what a bass would be. And it sounds insane in solo, but once you play it in the mix with the real bass, it really just gives you a really consistent low end. One thing that I also want to layer for this section is I'm going to layer in some strummed acoustic, and I might go ahead and layer the unaffected version of this little kind of guitar motif that we keep having. But let's go ahead and add all that stuff now. So here's what we ended up with. This is, again, just strummed acoustic guitar. It's a Taylor 214 CE, tracked in through this little Loughton 208, just in through my normal vocal chain outside of that. Coming to that MBSI on the acoustics bus, and then I have that little high guitar that I made earlier. I've just filtered it out a little bit. So now all the acoustics. And I don't want a lot of the low end of the body from these acoustics, so I'm kind of filtering a lot of that out with the MBSI, and I'm basically just leaving it as more of like a metallic-y percussive element. So here's what it sounds like. Let's move on to the pre-chorus. I kind of want to change the chord progression. Maybe that. Maybe something like that. Let's try that. Here we go. Here is the MIDI that we came up with. And I'm actually leaving the pre-chorus pretty bare. That's going to do it for that. Let's move on into the big soaring chorus. This is really where I want to start stacking a bunch of stuff. So let's start with drums. I'm actually going acoustic drums here. So I'm going to get those programmed out and then show you what we're working with. Let's move on to the acoustic drums. This is going to be a big thing right now. So I'm actually using a drum kit I've never used before. This is the Austin Davis kit by Drum Sample Shop. And again, like I said earlier, worship is a big genre that uses this sound a bunch. Me not being a worship guy, I just kind of stumbled into this library looking for drum sounds like the Band Camino and like some of the thicker Joan stuff. And I know a lot of those bands are live tracking. I can't do that in my studio. So I found this, and it is multi-sampled. I'm using it in battery, but I think there's also like Ableton kit versions, Logic kit versions, one-shots, and triggers. But I'm using it for the shells right now, and it sounds very, very good. I do have a little bit of processing happening. So on the kick, I actually have a little bit of EQ. So here's what it sounds like without my EQ. I'm reshaping it, getting a little bit more punch, a little bit more kind of low end and scooping out that mid. And then I'm compressing it a little bit with this pawn shop compressor. And then I'm just adding a gate at the very, very end just to take away a little bit of that room noise. We can even drive this attack up. And without any of that, still a great sample. I just wanted it to be super, super massive. As for the snare, kind of going a similar route. We're just boosting a lot of that top end. Without. I just really wanted it to be sizzly. I'm adding a gate to, again, tame some of that room sound that's baked into the samples. And then pawn shop compressor. This is my go-to snare setting. So fire. It just adds so much of that like thump to that snare, that body. And then the last thing, I'm throwing a clipper on my snare. And now the drums sound insane. The toms don't have anything on them. What I'm also doing is layering these one-shots. So normally I'm not a gatekeeper on the channel. However, I did have a friend send me these, and I'm not at liberty to say where I got them or how you guys can get them for this specific one. But I just found these one-shots that I'm kind of layering in. Without. They're really just adding a big, nice, bright, compressed hit. And then other than that, for cymbals, we're actually using the Gojira kit by Mixwave. I think Mixwave cymbals are always super, super fantastic. And this kit has multiple chinas, multiple crashes, and multiple rides. And then one thing that I wanted to do was kind of program a lot of little moments in this drum to feel like a real drummer. And that's kind of how I'm going and getting that really big, kind of over-the-top, overwhelming ballad drum that you would hear in somebody like Joan or the Band Camino or Knox or really anybody like that. But let's go ahead and move on to something like the actual chorus bass. It's going to be really similar to the verse. Here is our main chorus bass. So this is the one that I'm filtering out. It's just out of Trillion. It is the Rock P bass. That's what it sounds like normally. I'm just taking away all that low end, leaving the mids and the top, and then I'm layering that with that big sub that we talked about earlier. Just gives me a super nice, consistent low end, and it sounds super thick with the drums. Also, we're using some cymbal rolls out of the cymbals pack on Make Pop Music. Had a live drummer do a bunch of different cymbal shots and rolls and mallet, kind of like flourishes. Sounds sick. Let's get some piano in there. I'm going to actually use a different piano that's a little bit thicker. Here is our chorus piano. I'm playing it at a harder intensity. I'm also actually quantizing this one, and I am using a brighter piano. So I still have it on that C7, but I'm going to clear and color shifting it a little bit. That just gives me that driving force. Let's layer in some of those pads we had earlier, maybe a couple new pads as well. Let's go over the synth arrangement for the chorus. So we have that Guru pad earlier. Very pretty, very tucked in. That little MPC pad doing that top melody. That kind of bow double bass. But for new stuff, we're adding this pad. It's called Lucid. It's basically like a version of a brass. This is just out of the, I want to say, Lush as well. Yeah, so out of Lush. Adds a little stab. Real nice. Layers up real well with all these. And then last couple little pads and synth things. We have this little hybrid pad. Just pedaling on D. And then we have cello on the left and violin on the right. Basically just playing kind of the top melody for everything. So all together. Let's layer in some guitar. I want that melody from earlier, and I want big, big, big acoustic strums. Here is our acoustic guitar for the chorus. Same thing as earlier, tracked up on the same setup, same guitar. Really, the only processing is that MBSI that we did earlier. And then I have that little riff that I played, double tracked, completely open, not palm muted. And this style really is about layering sound, so the kind of arrangement can melodically be pretty straightforward and simple, so people can focus on vocals and lyrics and impact, but stacking up everything so it feels really, really thick and really, really big. So now all of that put together, we have a chorus that feels a little bit like this. Let's go ahead and add a little turnaround. I'm not going to do vocals on this tutorial because it's already running long, and I think that we could do a whole video on like vocal arrangement for a big ballad like this. So if you want to see a whole video on actually writing vocals for the style, layering vocals for the style, mixing vocals for the style, let me know. We can do that. And this one, I'm going to focus mainly on production and kind of the musical bed. But let's go ahead and add a little turnaround into the second verse. I almost just feel like I want to like do this. And then just go right into a second verse. Let's kind of flourish it out a little bit though. Let's check out this turnaround. So I just have that little acoustic kind of loop. And what I'm doing is just kind of layering that with a drum that I basically printed a bunch of stuff out of. And we're going to filter that as well. Let's do a little bit more. Let's do like this. Now, let's talk about this second verse that I went ahead and added. So I'm changing it from the first verse by adding real drums. So first verse, remember we had these little... Second verse, I'm saying forget all that, we're going to real drums. The only other main difference is that the bass line is not as like drawn out. I'm just doing quarter notes, so boom, 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 boom. Rather than in the first verse, I kind of let that bass mellow. Second verse, I'm definitely a little bit more on it. Acoustic guitars are louder, piano is a little bit harder velocity, but that's really it for the second verse. We're also cutting that second verse in half. So the way that this is looking at right now is basically a very short intro, just... And then 8-bar verse A, 8-bar verse B, 8-bar pre-chorus, 16-bar double chorus, and then little 4-bar turnaround, 8-bar verse, and then it's an 8-bar pre-chorus, and then it's actually a 16-bar pre-chorus. And one thing that I do want to show you is I added all of these oohs and ahs stacked up right here. So this is something that you hear in this genre a lot, big kind of soaring choirs. So in the second chorus that we have, I have all of these little guys right here. And really, that's just me singing those big O's 10 times. Here's what it sounds like dry. Filtering it out with some Pro Q. Compressing it with a little bit of Pro C. That'll come into play more in the chorus when it gets bigger. And then a little bit of Echo Boy. And then quite a bit of like big concert hall choir. And it's pretty tucked in because this will be where vocals kind of sit over the hook. But I also just wanted a big soaring moment, so this is where I kind of have all those vocals coming in more, and I'm layering it with a couple different synthetic choirs. So these are from Omnisphere. And layering those with my vocal, you get this. Sounds like 100 people. It's just 10 takes of me and 2 instances of Omnisphere. And then that's pretty much it for that post-chorus. Nothing else really changes. I added in some like risers and hits, but that's all very kind of whatever. And then for the end, the outro, I was like, it could be cool to kind of do a stripped version of the chorus as an outro. So I went back to kind of the verse drums, went back to just like the sub bass, and then just piano. So the whole thing is about creating a dynamic of small verses, really small pre-choruses, and then huge choruses. And so when I play the whole thing, here's kind of what the whole song feels like. Again, without vocals, we can add vocals next time. Then just kind of fades out from there, and that's really it. That is everything that goes into this. One thing that I will mention is kind of about the mix bus. I didn't really talk about this, but what I've been doing lately is adding some gold clip, and what this is allowing me to do is take away the transients of like the snare and then maybe like a kick, and just kind of shave off like a dB and a half. So then when it goes into my FG Red, I'm only doing like maybe 2 dB of compression, and then Mixhead is adding a little bit of its sting. Linen B is kind of doing its thing of reshaping, and then Pro L is really not doing much over here. We're like sitting at around 8 integrated LUFS, which is very loud for a ballad like this. And it's not doing more than like a couple dB at the biggest time, because everything is kind of taking off a little bit of extra. So I don't have, you know, Pro L slamming. We can kind of have everything in my chain working, where if I were to take it out, just really helps me kind of gain a little bit of extra headroom. Can have a super big loud master, but that is pretty much it for creating a pop rock kind of alternative ballad. If you like this video, please let me know. Leave a comment down below of what you want to see in the future, because we do take your requests. And then other than that, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can see next week's tutorial. Make sure that you head over to our website if you want to check out Lush, the presets that we used all throughout this. That's available over there. If you want to check out the cymbals pack, that's available over there. Go check out the Austin Davis kit from Drum Sample Shop, and go check out the Gojira kit from Mixwave. Not sponsored by either of them, but both are incredible for this style. But other than that, that's going to do it for this tutorial. I'll see you guys next week with more content. But until then, much love. Peace.